Good evening. Thank you for joining us at tonight's 6 at 6 lecture. This is the first lecture of the 2025-26 series and our 15th anniversary. So we've been doing this for 15 years. I have not been doing this for 15 years, but we have here. So the Scripps Howard Center sponsors the 6 at 6 lecture series, where we bring NKU faculty into the community to provide lectures of public interest. And with that, it is my pleasure tonight to introduce our speaker in not so Gen Z small print. Dr. Abdullah Al-Bahrani is an associate dean at the Haile College of Business and a professor of economics. His research focuses on household financial decisions and labor market, perhaps helpful with tonight's topic. I also folded it too many times. In 2016, he received an Excellence in Teaching Award from the university, and he's received the Dean's Citation for Outstanding Teaching within the Haile College of Business. His research has been published in a number of journals. Some of them include the Journal of Consumer Affairs, International Review of Economic Education, Journal of Economic Education, the Journal of Economics and Economic Education Research, the Journal of... We try to put economic education in everything we say. The Journal of Housing Research, the Journal of Housing Economics, and the Southern Economics Journal. With that, I'd like to turn it over to tonight's speaker. For those of you joining us online, you can type questions in the chat and they'll come to my phone and I will ask them for you. For those of you in the room, I will run around with a microphone. Could be entertaining, but please hold your questions until the microphone gets to you for our folks online. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shauna, and thank you to the team and to SparkHaus for hosting us today. This is an amazing venue. Most importantly, I want to thank you. I was told that I am competing with the Reds tonight, so I will get to the punchline. If you cannot make it to the rest of my presentation, what you should know today is the labor market is broken, Gen Z is not. But you all love to blame Gen Z for the things that you don't do well. So today we're going to talk about the background, how did I get to this punchline, and I really want to know your input, your experiences. Part of these lecture series is to hear from you all and to share with you all what we do at NKU and in today's context, the Haile College of Business. So I'll talk about my home college a little bit as well when we talk about how do we fix this broken labor pipeline. So thank you for being here. We'll start with this amazing quote. We have diversity in our audience today with respect to age. So each generation imagines itself to be more intelligent than the one that went before it and wiser than the one that comes after it. Do you agree? Yeah. All right, so I'm not telling you something new. Yet, when we talk about Gen Z, we know this. You just all admitted to me that we see ourselves superior to all other generations. But we're not willing to give other people grace. And this has impacts in the labor market and the economy. So you all agree to this. When we show this to Gen Z, what do you think their response is? Okay, boomer. Right? You're talking nonsense. You're yapping. You just like to hear yourself speak. You're not in touch with who we are. So we've got a disconnect, and yet we're all supposed to transact and be together. And my biggest fear, another punchline of today's conversation, is if we do not listen to Gen Z and we don't open the doors, we are hurting middle management 5-10 years down the road. So the question should be, is how do we develop a stronger pipeline for people to be able to navigate our labor market and, dare I say, take your job? They should. They're the future. But what we're doing is we're closing the doors on them because we don't understand them. And today we're going to try to understand them better so we could be better managers, better parents, hopefully, better educators, and better community members. So if you're a Gen Zer, raise your hand. You're welcome. I'm doing your job for you. All right, so we're going to talk about 5 generations and 1 workforce. We're going to talk about who's who by generation. I'm going to stereotype you and your generation. And then we're going to talk about Gen Z's lens, as I said, and how they see the world so you could understand them better and you know how to motivate them and open up doors for them. We're going to talk about the skill divide and then bridging the skill divide, and then we're going to talk about your action plan for after you leave here. Okay. So we're talking about, for the first time ever, we have 5 generations working in the same space. And the reason that we have 5 generations working in the same space is because economic prosperity allowed us to. Our living standards and our living, our age, we're living longer, and therefore we're able to work longer and spend the same time with the labor market. So right now we have the silent generation in the labor market. They have mostly exited though, okay? They're on their way out, but we'll talk about them a little bit because we need to understand their views on life. Baby boomers. Any baby boomers in the market? All right, thank you for being here. Baby boomers are extending their careers, okay? They're staying in the labor market longer than previous generations. The labor market allows them to, their health allows them to, but they're often found in leadership roles right now, okay? They're occupying that space. Gen X, any Gen Xers? Okay, shout out to the Gen Xers, Jenny. Gen Xers are the mid-career folks right now. They're the bridge between the baby boomers and my favorite generation, the millennials. The millennials, my generation, they're actually the largest share of the workforce right now, okay? But they haven't really moved up into the leadership roles yet because they're occupied by the freaking baby boomers, right? They are holding our spots. So I'm looking for a raise and a new job title. It's a baby boomer that's keeping me from arriving there, okay? Gen X is getting squeezed in between. And then the topic of tonight, the group that we're all here trying to understand, Gen Z. They're the newest entrants into the labor market. And a lot of people, and I know I am making this mistake, I'm talking about Gen Z. Honestly, we're too late to the conversation. Today, we should be talking about Gen Alpha, okay? Because if we're not prepared for Gen Z, we're not prepared for Gen Alpha, okay? So I'll start the conversation with Gen Z. Hopefully, if you like the research that we're doing, we could expand it to Gen Alpha together. The goal of today's conversation is for you to join us on our research projects together, okay? So what's the implication here? Different work expectations, different communication styles, right, Elaine? And most importantly, different priorities. Each generation has different values that drive them. And it's frustrating for the other generations because we're not technically speaking the same values language. And that's where a lot of the clashes happen. All right. So let's talk about the silent generation, 1928 to 1945. Those are the birth years. And I'm leading here with stereotypes. Might upset some people. I'm sorry. Your feelings matter. But on average, this is how we describe them. If this does not describe you, you're not average. Okay? So, stereotypes: dutiful, disciplined, frugal, traditional. And the economic lens in which they see the world. And one thing that I want to tell you is everything about our culture is based on the scars of the economy that we carry with us. We experience the economy and we take that lens into different relationships. So why is the silent generation dutiful, disciplined, frugal, and traditional? Well, they grew up in a culture of scarcity. They grew up with learning not to waste. okay? And the reason being is because they're products of a culture around the Great Depression, World War II, okay? They did not have a lot of choices. So that made it so that they valued stability over risk. So if you talk to somebody from the silent generation, they tell you to take the first job that's offered to you. Right? Why are you going to travel and do your graduate degree in Boston? Stay here. Okay? That's the lens that they see the world through. Okay, a lot of you are nodding your heads. That means this conversation is resonating. I appreciate the feedback. All right, baby boomers, we're talking about you. They're optimistic, ambitious. They are the me generation. Everything is about the baby boomers, right? They're also, though, resistant to change. So let's ask why. Why are they the me generation? Okay? Well, they grew up in the post-war economic expansion. Money was thrown at them. The government was spending a lot of money on them. It was me, me, me. What are you giving me? And I mean, the GI Bill, the higher education boom, all happened under their watch. Okay? One way of looking at it as well is that baby boomers might see how the role of government can change society. They had first row experience with that. But they also went through a lot of change. Social change, cultural change, racial tensions were happening in their surroundings. They also went through Reaganomics, deregulation, during their working years. Okay? So this generation benefited from post-war prosperity, but they're also accused of hoarding that wealth. Okay? Why? Why are they hoarding their wealth? Well, lifespans increased as well. Right? They don't know when the end is going to be. So why not retain as much of it as you can? Okay? The resisting to policy is probably because they've already done a lot of resisting. They've fought. They've given up fighting. It's y'all's role now to fight. Okay? All right, Gen X. Who are the Gen Xers again, just so I could have a mental picture? All right, so this explains my wife, Jenny Al-Bahrani, perfectly. Independent, skeptical, right? Entrepreneurial, definitely. Okay, this generation was willing to try new things, but they also grew up independent as latchkey kids. This is the first generation where both parents were working, okay? So they had to learn how to come home and let themselves in by themselves, to cook dinner by themselves. They had a lot of independence, okay? The issues that they faced is a higher divorce rate than previous generations. So split families is something that they had to navigate. They also started to experience the dot-com boom and the bust, and the 1987 crash. So there's some scars that they're walking through in life. But most importantly, for a person that researches household finance and how people make decisions around their finances, this was the first generation that completely shifted from pensions to 401ks. Pensions, the companies took care of you. They made sure that you're going to be okay when you retire. This generation had to be independent. I had to figure it out on my own. A lot of them didn't know how to. So how did they learn? Trial and error. And I always say the most expensive way to learn is through trial and error. Okay? So our favorite generation, as I said, the millennials. Yes, shout out to Paulina. So Paulina is entitled. She is tech obsessed, okay? I don't go anywhere without my technology. Any new technology comes out, I have to buy it. The new iPhone is on my wish list, right? But most importantly, we're known as the avocado toast spenders. So before the Starbucks, memes about how the generations are spending too much money on coffee, it was avocado toast, actually. And the idea here is not that we're actually buying avocado toast, is this generation actually loves to spend on themselves for consumption purposes, not investment, but to feel good. They'll buy a more expensive bottle of bourbon. They will buy the extra, leg room on the airplane. They'll justify the spending because it feels good. So they're also, though, known as the financially unlucky generation. I graduated, and the first thing that I experienced was the Great Recession. Thank you, boomers. Right? That's what the economy handed us. And as soon as before the Great Recession, we experienced a lot of political instability with September 11th. Okay? Our generation did not know what was going to happen with wars, with international relationships. And obviously, Great Recession, which technically we didn't recover from until about 2018, if you want to think about it that way. And then as soon as we recover from it and we're like, all right, then we experience the COVID pandemic. Okay? Yet we survive. So before we get to Gen Z, we need to get to know what their lens is. So as I said, the economy shapes our experiences, and a lot of people don't think about these financial burdens or even happy moments that we experience and how they shape our view on labor market decisions, on what is the role of government. Well, it turns out what you experience in your childhood influences the lens that you see when you get to voting. Okay? So your relationship with partners are influenced by the economy, by the experiences that you have. Do you trust other people? Well, trust is a function of, trusting institutions, trusting financial markets. Once you lose trust in one, it's easy for you to lose trust in the others. So I want to ask you, because I've talked a lot already, who's Gen Z to you? How would you describe them? Yes, microphone, Shauna, if anybody participates. Thank you, Princess, and then Dawn.
I would say socially awkward.
Okay, the Gen Z stare. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Dawn? Sorry, Shauna.
I might have a couple of extra words than Princess did.
Please.
But I love these dreams and goals they have of I'm going to take it easy. It's going to be a different kind of experience. The way they want to work and the way they want to take care of themselves, and I can actually envision that they would be the ones who would help boomers like me, right, figure out how to take more vacations, because we do work so hard, but we boomers are still trying to figure out how are we going to pay the bills and make sure there's food in the restaurant and that the supplies and the services are out there if all of these Gen Zers are on a freaking vacation, right? So who's going to help us produce all this stuff is the question I always have. Is great, don't go to work, but then
who's going to do the work?
And who's going to pay for your rent? And who's going to do all these other things? It's interesting because I'm at the end of the boomer, raised by the silent generation with an ex-husband that is a whatever the next one is behind the boomers, with a Gen X kid, right? My kid's 40 years younger than me, well, 39. So so it's like I've got all of these things in there. It's very interesting to try to navigate and then enter into the AI world on top of it. So
before you take that, how would you describe them again?
I have no idea.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
I love the. It's almost a selfishness.
Okay.
Because nobody took care of us, and we're stuck with your mess.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you, Don. Anybody else?
So I was surprised. So I'm at the very beginning. Where are we, Susan? Beginning of Gen X, right? Yeah, beginning of Gen X. I was surprised when you said we are the me. Was it us?
No.
Whatever. It's boomer. Oh, whatever.
Boomers are
I was
the hoarders.
surprised by that because I would have said Gen Z, but I think it's because I'm saying, well, if you're, only inside yourself and your technology, that it's all about you. But I hear you saying it's something different. That's interesting.
All
Yeah.
right. I appreciate you sharing, and then let's do one more over there, Shauna. Thank you. We'll have more time for discussion.
Let's do scared and adventurous.
Scared and adventurous at the same time.
Yes.
Okay.
As what I would describe it.
Okay, we'll do one more because Megan's dying to share over here.
I would describe Gen Z in 3 words: versatile, ambitious, and anxious. Because we are the anxious generation.
Okay, I like this. Sure, RO. One more.
Thank you. So my sense is that Gen Z is also a generation that is highly connected, because compared to the other generations, we have definitely more access to technology and social media. And I would say that has also changed exposure to what is possible in the world, in the sense that people maybe 40, 50 years ago had dreams which included getting a house, getting 2 children, a dog, and life would be satisfying.
Yeah.
But for us, it's more about what are our friends in London, Australia doing? So we are conflicted between those American dream goals, but also those I want to travel and discover the world.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Devin. I was like, wow, Gen Z is talking today. All right, I appreciate that, and I think we need to do more of that, kind of like sit around and describe who we are, because depending on which generation you're seeing the world from, the description was, I think, drastically different, right? So let's talk about Gen Z and the way, I want us to anchor our conversation in the way they see the world, and I think it will help us explain why they behave the way Dawn said, unsure, not knowing what motivates them. So I'll share with you a recent survey asked people across generations what salary they needed to feel financially secure. Okay? And I want you to ask yourself that question as well. Don't answer it. We've already talked too much. What is the annual salary that you need to feel financially secure? Give you 3 seconds. Lock in your answers. So now we're going to go by generation and see what their answer was. Okay? So baby boomers. Baby boomers, when asked this question, said that the number, annual salary that would make them feel comfortable is, drum roll, $99,000. Okay, nodding your head. Okay, all right. Gen X. They asked Gen X the same question. What did they say? 212. The me generation. All right, and then they went and asked Paulina's generation, the poor millennials, and the millennials said 180. You're shaking your head, confirm, okay? I really appreciate the nods as an instructor and a person that talks. Your nods really make me feel at home here, so thank you. Gen Z. Y'all want to guess? Somebody throw out a number and I'll repeat it for the people on 120. 585. You underestimated. Close. Just 5-fold too low. All right, 585. And if you're like me, in my generation, or if you hire Gen Zs, you're like, they're so out of their mind. This is not tied to reality. Why would they say 585? All other generations are realistic. Gen Z is wild. And I said the same thing, and I actually went on LinkedIn and I clowned Gen Z. I said, you entitled generation. Oh, they showed up in the comments. They had feelings. But I quickly apologized. And I'll tell you why I apologized. Here's a graph. I'm an economist, so graphs make me happy. Let me explain to you what we have here. We have the years 1970 to 2020, and then the salary on the y-axis. The red dots are what we just looked at. So boomers said 99,000 would make them happy. Gen X 212, millennials 180, and then Gen Z way up there. Okay? But what I plotted with it at the same time is that mean salary of the top 5% in the economy during the year that they turned 18. So I found the data and I said, if you were top 5% in that economy when Gen Z turned 18, what was that number? I don't know if you pick up on this, but Gen X is right on that top 5. Gen Z is slightly above. The problem is not Gen Z. The problem is millennials are depressed. Right? Millennials estimate how much they should have made. So really, the Gen Z's 585,000 is not a reflection of their unrealistic expectations. It's a function of income inequality. Income inequality has grown so much, and we base our measure of success not by the average, because we already talked about we're not average. We want to make as much as the top 5%. That's who dictates our sense of well-being. And at what age? At the age you turn 18. And that's why 18 is so impressionable, right? When you turn 18, you look around, you say, who's the top 5% in the economy? Like Aro just said, looking at them through Instagram, that's who I want to be, and that's what success is. So Gen Z is not off. Gen Z is just reflecting the inequality that we see in our economy. You're welcome, Gen Z. All right, let's talk about something else. If you've ever hired a Gen Z, I want you to tell me, how would you rank this statement? Gen Z doesn't want to work. How many of you strongly disagree? Disagree? Neither? Agree? Strongly agree. Oh, okay, you guys are being polite right now because voting is not anonymous here. So this is actually something that we hear a lot when we talk to hiring managers. This generation just doesn't want to work. Dawn talked about it here a second ago. They just want to travel. There's no initiative, no excitement for doing the work that needs to happen. So what do we have here? Here's a list of news articles going back to 1894 where managers said, people today just don't want to work. So this is just a reflection of what we say about every generation. All right. This is the other thing that I want you to know. Here I have all the generations, okay, the years they were born, their current age, so we're representing Gen Alpha. And I've told you how many recessions they have experienced. Okay? During the birth year specifically. So between 1901 to 1927, the greatest generation experienced 8 recessions, and the amount of months that they were actually in recessions, 135. So this might be hard for us to see, but here's another version of it. Timeline, each of the shaded colors tells you what generation it is. The darker shades tells you the recession, and the width of the recession tells you how long it lasted. Something that's missing here is the severity of the recession, but the punchline here is throughout time, we've experienced less recessions and they've actually become less or shorter recessions. And that's the lens that we walk in, right? And that's going to tell us a lot about Gen Z. So Gen Z, yeah, you know, they complain about the Great Recession, but they didn't feel it. Their parents felt it, okay? The COVID recession, if you look at the COVID recession, it was a really difficult time from a health standpoint, but the COVID recession was a quarter, just 3 months. Our fiscal and monetary policy kicked in, so we really did not experience severity of having to search for a job, those tough times that other generations experienced. Here's another thing that I want you to look at from a Gen Z's perspective. These are the job openings in the economy. Gen Z will tell you, oh, it's really hard to find a job. No, there's more job openings available than ever before. Gen Z is a generation of abundance. They've never really had to struggle for a job. That's why when I had a conversation with a student today, like the job market is really tough. The unemployment rate is 4.3. By all means, this is the lowest unemployment rate we have experienced on average in decades. But their reference point is very different, right? So here's where we start to talk about, okay, if they're not finding jobs, what might be the explanation? And if you've been in higher ed in the past couple of years, there's an attack on higher education, or what I call attack on the return on investment of education. People are questioning, what's the value of education? This is one of my favorite graphs. It's the recent college graduates' unemployment rate in blue relative to all other unemployment rates. And if you notice, post-COVID, the unemployment rate for the recent graduates relative to the unemployment rate of the average in the United States, it's getting narrower. So Gen Z is saying, well, actually it's not Gen Z, it's their parents saying, if the chances of you being unemployed are equal to you not going to college, why go to college? And that's the first push on the return on investment. Here's a different way of looking at it. This is the gap between them. So whenever it turns negative, like it did over here in 2015, that starts to tell you that the returns to education have disappeared, if you just look at the unemployment rate. So when Gen Z questions what's the value of education, that's what they're talking about, okay? On average, the returns to the unemployment rate are actually diminishing. All right. They're also living in a time where this is an index of economic uncertainty, okay? So returns on education are lower. Yes, there's jobs out there, but is it guaranteed? Policies are all over the place. I don't know what to expect tomorrow. And that is reflected in the data, and that's what they carry around. I had students stop by my office today wondering what's going to happen when they graduate this December. I can't tell you. I don't know, because uncertainty is at its highest level. So I call this the economic pressure cooker. Abundance of jobs. Okay, it's decreasing right now, but still abundant. They're questioning what the meaning of work is. You're asking me to show up to work, but there's no career path upwards because all other generations are blocking me, making it really difficult. So I'm just going to get my check and then travel to London, right? Oh. The last one, and I think the most important one on that graph, is parental pressure, okay? You've heard of the helicopter parents. You've heard of the bowling alley parents. You haven't heard of that? So the bumper parent, when you go play a bowl, if you have your kids, you put the bumper, and this is the only path you should take, dear child. So this generation is being dictated on what they should do, okay? And they're trying to find themselves because their parents are telling them what the meaning of success is. All right. So let's talk about some other data. We asked employers, or actually here, this was a survey by AACSB and Deloitte, asked recent college graduates, are you prepared to work? 20 to 40% of them said, We're not prepared to work. We don't feel equipped to make it to the labor market. Then they asked their bosses, would you hire a Gen Z? 94% of them, Devin, said no. This is the generation that is going to lead in innovation for us. Yet we don't want to hire them. It's our choice. We're looking at my dear students and saying, you don't belong. Then we wonder why they are detached at work, why they're not investing in the things that we care about. You don't care about them. You have shown it. All right. So the other thing that we hear is there's a skill gap. Gen Zs just, they're not ready. It's not because we don't like them. Their skills are just not there. So Jenny Al-Bahrani and I, this is the beginning of a series of research projects. We asked, what's the relationship between students' self-perception of their workforce, competencies, and what employers identify as important competencies, okay? So this is going to be a reflection. So we surveyed students using a self-assessment survey, and then we asked employers to give us their priorities and their values when they hire people. And we just want to see where their values, right? We talked about the importance of values matching. Do they match? My self-perception versus my employer's, what my employer values. So this is to speak research talk, it is a validated instrument. There are other instruments to measure competencies, but we liked this one better because it had more dimensions, okay? It gave us things that we could ask students and employers on: ability to make decisions, initiative, achieving results, and 12 total competencies. So we will get to know if there is a gap, where is that gap? All right. So I just want to tell you what each of these decision categories looks like. Decision making is actually made out of 1, 2, 3, 4 questions, okay? And they ranked it from 0 to 5, 5 being really important, 0, I don't care about this, or I'm not good at it, okay? So this is a screenshot of the questions. As I said, we had 12. We normalized them. We did the whole, academic stuff. I'll show you a graph. So these are violin plots, my new favorite visualization. And what you have here is the dot tells you the mean, and then it also gives you the distribution. So it's important for us to know what the average is, but how is it dispersed? The highest ranking averages, students said they feel really equipped when they leave our college, our classes, to be leaders. They feel comfortable with integrity, their ability to make decisions. They feel equipped to do this when they come to your job. Whether you believe it or not, that's what they feel. Okay? So Gen Z, do you agree, disagree with the top 3? Thank you for helping us make a decision here. All right. So leadership, integrity, decision-making are our top 3 skills that our students walk out with. We asked, areas where we could improve. So anybody working on curriculum design out there, their enthusiasm. They don't feel enthusiastic. So if you ever wonder about the Gen Z stare, and they're looking at you like, they're just not excited, okay? Wit and temper are things that they want to learn how to manage. So if you're doing a leadership training, these are areas that would be really great. So this is what employers said. Same question, integrity, decision-making, and leadership. Employers and students value or have the same values and skills match. They're the same. So wit and temper are at the end. So now we wanted to know, okay, average is great, but how big of a difference? And what we find is when it comes to decision-making, initiative, integrity, enthusiasm, they're similar. Employers and students are the same when they how they perceive those items. So there's a match there. With the rest, although their averages might be high or ranked higher, there's a mismatch. So there's a mismatch in how much, let's look at leadership. Students rank themselves around 92% around leadership. But employers say, when we hire you, we only need that at 80%. So our students are walking in wanting to be leaders on day one, right? We talked about this. But you're like, no, you don't need to be a leader. Just take the orders. So that's where the mismatch is, okay? This is a mismatch of lack of information, of communication. We can solve this with better communication and anticipating what the either generation that is hiring or being hired has. So how do we bridge this perceived gap? How do we minimize this gap? Because I think everybody that's over here showed up today said, I want to solve this problem, right? Thank you for participating. So here's the gap. Students in higher education, and when I say students, that's our Gen Z right now mostly, okay? And that's what I relate to. So they need better tools and clearer communication about what the workforce actually requires. Okay? They have feelings about what they're good at, but they don't know what the labor market actually needs. Okay? From employers, employers need to be ready for the next generation. The question is, how can you be ready? You need to communicate to your future employees. You need to speak their language. And if you don't notice that there is a language gap, I highly recommend that you go and check out some job postings. Job postings are not written for Gen Z. Who are they written for? The hiring manager. You're speaking your language. You're like, these are your job duties, and yeah, you might be expected to work overtime, you might be expected to travel. You're putting all this security language in there, but what is it communicating to Gen Z? There's no work-life balance, right? So one thing that Jenny and I help employers do is write better job descriptions. How do you communicate to your incoming employee? There's other ways, though, as well that we need to do it. This is my visualization. I love this visualization because this, to me, is what the talent acquisition pipeline is. If you're in management or hiring people, this is what it looks like. And that's why I said at the beginning of our conversation that we should really be talking about Gen Alpha, because they're at the beginning of the pipeline in the K through 12 education. Then they're going to graduate and come to us in higher education. Usually these are siloed. But at NKU, we're really trying to develop an overlap because we realized that K through 12, if they want to prepare their students to come to higher education, we have to be part of their community as well. So school-based scholar programs, dual credit education, YSA, these are all examples where we're building or bridging the gap. Historically, my students that are sitting here in the front row would go through education, they would graduate, and then they would immediately come to you as employers and you would hire them. That's a siloed model. That's when I say the talent acquisition model is broken. It's because employers need to be part of higher education. They need to help us design curriculum. You need to tell us what's important, right? If you've ever been in a situation where you said, education is not teaching our students what they need for the workforce, then you're not invested enough. Because you have information that you haven't shared with other people. Come, join us. Join us at Northern Kentucky University. Tell us how to prepare students for your jobs. More importantly, if you're an employer, we also want to be part of your hire or your training, your education. They need a master's in business leadership and innovation after a while, right, Sandra? Right? Let us be part of that. But right now we have a model that's extremely siloed, and we keep it siloed because it goes back to the point that we're not talking to each other. We all see the problem, but we're not invested in the solution. And the solution is we all need to be in rooms like this, telling each other our perceptions, and then figuring out how to break that mold. So we have the Fellows Program. How many of you over here are fellows? Raise your hand if you're a fellow. Okay. These are students that are going through mentorship programs. They're out in the community to learn from you. So meet with them if you have an opportunity today. Ask them what they're learning. But more importantly, tell them what you think they should learn as well. Okay? That's a new screen. All right. So we've talked about generations. We've talked about Gen Z. Now hopefully you understand them a little bit better. And then we talked about these competencies. One thing that I did not share with you is every morning at 7:35, I share a nugget of economic understanding. A lot of the parts of the presentations that you saw today are actually collections of previous articles that I have written. If you want to be part of that mailing list, you can scan the QR code. And here, usually I try to keep them under 3 to 5 minute reads because I know you all are busy. But this QR code will actually take you to the summary of today's presentation and also the slides because I know you're going to want to go home or the Reds game and go through these slides again. I really appreciate you all, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you so much. Start.
Getting my steps in.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. When you talked about how the job descriptions are not written well for Gen Z, and I was wondering if you could expound on that a little bit more about why they're not and how they can look better.
Yeah, so the first thing that I would say is job descriptions are focused on HR language, meaning legalese. It's written on how are we going to cover our behind if this person comes back and says the job description is not exactly what you hired me. So we fill it with things, way more at times than what the actual job description duties are going to be. But most importantly, and this has to do with the overall organization. Okay. Okay, and then this will allow me to give people the microphone as well, so you don't have to run around, Sean. So the biggest thing with employers is employers believe that Gen Z should feel privileged to have a job. And we just talked about how they have abundance of jobs, or that perception. They've never really had to experience a bad recession. So their perspective is, if your job does not speak to me, I'm just gonna go on to the next one. And that upsets the boomers and the Gen X's. Like, how do they have the audacity? Well, the data says they should. So what does Gen Z really want to hear? What's your mission? If you did not exist as an organization in this world today, what would go wrong with the world? And most employers don't talk about why they exist. They just say, hey, here's a job that pays $45, show up on Monday. Gen Z needs to know that they're solving a bigger problem. And we need to do a better job of saying why this job is important. Ara?
Thank you, Dr. A. Great presentation.
Thank you.
I have two questions. My first question is, so I understand your model when it comes to making sure that we have competencies and skills through school and also through the feedback of employers. So my first question for you is, how much weight do you put on personality shaping and value shaping that happens outside of school? Because when we're not at school, we're in the household, whether it is with parents or with friends, doing things that are not necessarily academic. My second question is, are your findings, do your findings hold regardless of citizenship status or not? I'm wondering whether it differs between Gen Z who are American and Gen Zs who are immigrants.
Aro, great questions, and we have actually guests visiting us from Coimbatore, India today. So I will tell you that the next part in our research is looking at international perceptions of competencies, because our lens that we're looking at is totally Northern Kentucky and Miami of Ohio, Oxford students. But we do have variations in grade level, if you want to say, and also, think about all the demographics that you could collect in a survey. But we haven't done that part. That's the next phase, is looking at it in different cross sections. Your first question is about how do we make sure that the human capital production model extends beyond just the time at school. That's something that we're really working on a lot at the Haile College of Business. We're thinking about how do we extend our classrooms and our community outside of the boundaries of the four walls that cover. And I'll highlight things, for instance, that Carrie Wright-Perkins is working on, speaker series like Beyond the Degree, professional development opportunities, and things like, Shauna and her team are doing with 6 at 6 to bring the community in, because you are going to learn more from interacting and, brushing elbows with other people. So we're trying to extend the boundaries of education, but also welcome other people into our spaces as well, so that the conversation can continue. Thank you. Dr. Kanuka, or the entitled millennial.
Hi, great presentation, and I think it's a very important topic to cover. So I have also two questions. One question is, what recommendations do you have for educators who are working with Gen Z students? And another question, what recommendations do you have for Gen Z who will be working with other generations and coexisting with other generations as well?
Great question. So for educators, I'll give you the advice that we talk about all the time, and that is we need to do a better job of creating ambiguity, allowing Gen Z to struggle, to figure out what they want without our influence on designing the life that, telling them, oh, you should go to grad school. Academics are we're guilty. We see a great student, we're like, oh, you should go to grad school. No, we just did what their parents are doing. We're imposing our vision for their life. We need to sit down and say, hey, what would you like to do? And we have Business Summit happening at the Haile College of Business, and I had several conversations today with students where I asked, what would your dream job be? And a lot of them didn't have an answer, right? Because they haven't really had that vision or that space to even ideate, okay? So we need to create that space of providing information and asking them the tough questions. And sorry, your second question was? Yeah, for Gen Z, you just need to be aware that other generations believe you're entitled, you're lazy, right? And in economics, we have this concept called market power. Whoever has the market power dictates what happens. So regardless of how you feel, the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials, they still dictate your path to success. So you have to also assimilate to the culture. You have to bend a little bit, okay? And that sense of abundance, oh, I could go to another job, allows them to do that. But now as job openings are decreasing, Gen Z is going to be in for a rude awakening where they're like, oh, I don't have other options. I have to listen to what Dr. Abdullah Al-Bahrani is actually saying, right? So just be prepared. The market is changing. Yeah, thank you. Don? All right, let me actually go here, and then I'll come over there.
So I was just curious, the competencies about leadership, right, that both employers and the Gen Z are very interested in. And I know from personal experience, I look for people who have leadership skills and who want to bring leadership skills. But my experience, not always, but often, is, and I don't want any of my fellows to think I'm talking about them at all, right? Because they're amazing. But I think that there's different definitions and expectations of what leadership looks like. Like there's, okay, I'm out of school so I can be the boss, versus how do I be curious to see how I support all the other humans and things? But have you done any research to try to understand the distinctions of leadership between the generations?
Yeah, great question. So in our data, it has 4 questions about leadership. And the next step is to drill down to see if there's any variations within those subcomponents. But you're right, the definition of leadership and the expectation of how much leadership. So we might have a definition, but what's the intensity? You want people to be leaders when they show leadership qualities, but you don't want them to come in and lead your job, right? You're actually more interested in them knowing time and place, when to step in and when to listen or take orders. So that's, and with our students, we see it often, because we train them really well into taking positions. They go out in the labor market on day 1 thinking that they're gonna be the general regional manager, right? That's the job that they want. And the stepping stone and the leadership pipeline is something that they are not clear about, right? And that's something that we need to do a better job about. All right, other questions? Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm a baby boomer. So from that perspective, I raised a Gen X. I ain't got custody of my granddaughter. So our thoughts are totally different, but I learn from her and she learns from me as to what she thinks, okay? So to me, the path, and I thought entrepreneurship was going to be part of a discussion here. It seems that that's the best setup or an alternative that a lot are taking now, because corporations are not what they used to be in the past when I was coming through. Some of them are smaller. I mean, they've divested, a portion sold off. You don't see the big pieces coming together like Disney and whatever that was I saw today. But there are smaller boutique type businesses where they are thriving. I mean, they're creating new businesses that I've never ever heard of before. And that to me is the trend that I'm seeing that's happening, and that's the trend that's going to have to take over for them to be successful.
Thank you. Really, is that a clap? Is that a Gen Z clap? That is a Gen Z clap. All right. Yeah, we cannot leave here without being in the SparkHaus and talk about entrepreneurship. So the issue that you're talking about is true, right? But it's not necessarily a Gen Z phenomenon. It is the economy. At no point in time has it been easier for me to take money out of your pocket right now and sell you something. So it's a function of technological improvements, right? So Gen Z has markets and systems that have been developed that allow them to take advantage of non-traditional work experiences. And this goes back to the abundance. When I looked at the job, when I posted the job openings, those were traditional jobs. We didn't talk about Uber Eats driver. We didn't talk about a newsletter writer that is trying to charge you for accessing their content, or an influencer, right? These are all opportunities that are available, and Gen Z has the audacity to try it out and see if it works or not. And the other generations find it really hard because they like the traditional mindset. So entrepreneurship is on the rise. It's one of the reasons that SparkHaus is here today. It's a sign of the times, and I think we need to encourage Gen Z to do more entrepreneurial activities, because that's where innovation comes from, right? And what we need as an overall economy today is more innovation rather than less. So that's why I say they're our future, and we should be investing in them. Thank you. Devin, and then Taylor.
So my question kind of goes back to your graph that had the number of jobs, and you talk about the abundance, but how many of those jobs actually pay like a living wage? Because I feel like that's one thing that not only like myself but other Gen Z are finding, is that there are these jobs that are entry level jobs that aren't paying enough for, and millennials, it was the same, like they're not able to live alone. Sometimes they can't even live with one other person. They have to, you know, bunk together just to be able to live. And so when you say that like Gen Z could look at the job market and be like, I don't like this one, I'm gonna go to this one, I agree with that, but also at the same time, like, I feel like Gen Z, one of our big priorities is the money. So like how, when you look at that, how many of those jobs are actually paying what people can live on?
Devin, we're going to get to know you here. I'm going to ask some follow-up questions. First of all, I'll tell you what the millennial in me heard when you were speaking. What do you mean living wage? You need a job. Get a job. Doesn't matter what it pays. Pay the dues, go up the ladder, and if you work really hard, you'll get paid. Right? And you're like, that sounds so disgusting. But that's how my generation did it, the generations before us. Yes, we roomed with each other. My first car was $600 with a broken windshield that I couldn't fix for 3 months. Right? Illegal, don't do that. But those are the sacrifices that we were willing because we trusted that the steps would be there. Gen Z does not trust that the steps are going to be there. And that's on us. We have not shown them what the career ladder looks like. Right? So when I tell you, hey, if you do this job for 2 years, I know right now it's not a living wage, but you'll get 60 or 70,000 in 2 years. Like, you have given me no evidence that I should trust you. Okay? So these are two lenses. I literally played two personalities here with you. My initial reaction is pay your dues, but I also understand that the system, and you know what? You didn't even experience the system yourself. It's your parents, right? The millennials and especially the millennials that experienced the Great Recession, they're telling you, oh, they're only paying you $45,000. I don't know, there's other jobs out there. Go do better. Work harder, find another job. And by the way, you're staying at home, so you don't have any bills to pay. And that's what I talk about, the abundance. You can wait for a better job. You can wait for the living wage job to show up. And that upsets the other generations, but from your standpoint, there's no rush. I'll wait for the right job, the living wage job. But during the time, you'll tweet about it. You'll put, a whole TikTok about how the job market's broken. I only got 3 offers that pay me $40,000. The economy's broken. And then the millennials and the baby boomers are like, what's wrong with this generation? Just take the job. And we have to acknowledge what the conversation is. All right. Yes, Taylor.
What would you say Gen Z should focus on outside of school to fix the anxiety that they don't feel that they have the skills equipped to tackle a job?
So what we find in our data is they do feel like they have the skills, okay? I don't think the problem is that they don't feel equipped. They feel like they don't know how to communicate it, okay? I know I'm a leader, but my boss doesn't see it, okay? How do I communicate to them? This is a value proposition communication issue. We should be focusing more on the soft skills, telling people how to manage space, okay? If you walked in here earlier, you could easily see who the Gen Zs were versus Gen Zs found their spot, they found their friends, and then they got on their phones, right? The other generations at least looked at other people, okay? They tried to have a conversation, okay? That's what we need to teach Gen Z, is not just having the value, having the skill is not the important part. showing and communicating the skill is what's important. You could be, a top, 4.0 student, but if you don't talk about it, nobody knows about it. Yes.
We have the AI tools coming up, and the usage, if you see with different generations, like the Gen X, they are trying to get to know about that and work on it. The millennials are kind of savvy on that, and Gen Z, they are very explorative on that. So like if you take a job, if they are in the job market, if you maybe Gen Z would have a quicker solution to a problem, whereas other generations might take some time. So they might, do you feel that they might have a faster career growth compared to other generations who are there, and will they sustain?
So the question is, with AI's introduction and Gen Z's proficiency in AI, are they more ready to take on the labor market? Great question. You make a really strong assumption that Gen Z actually knows how to use AI. I'm not sure about that. They know of AI, but they know of it of asking a question and getting a response. And I'll give a shout out to the Biz Access Hub and Dawn Parks for all the training that she does with employers and employees on how to leverage AI from a productivity standpoint and a growth standpoint. So I would push back against that assumption and I say they use it, but I don't think they know how to maximize it. That's one. Two, when they do use it, and there's research and data on this, they actually don't tell anybody. And the idea here is they're scared that their employer, if their employer knows that they're using AI to increase their efficiency, then the employer will say, I don't need you, Gen Z. And that's the narrative in the market. When we look at the unemployment rates of college graduates, everybody's saying it's AI taking Gen Z's jobs. I will push back. It's not that. It's uncertainty in the economy, and employers are using this opportunity to blame AI instead of saying, it's just a risky time to hire people, so we're not going to hire educated, more expensive students. So that's my hypothesis. I think they can learn, but I don't think they have learned it well. All right, I want to say thank you all for a fantastic Wednesday evening. Thank you, Shauna and the team, for organizing this.
And thank you to Norse Media. They've been working hard around the scenes, trying to help us get this out into the world, and they will also be recording it for us, and a YouTube video will be available, which I'm sure Dr. A will be happy to share out for us. So thank you again to Dr. Al-Bahrani. Appreciate you being here tonight. And thank you to SparkHaus for allowing us to be here. They opened on Monday, and so this is day 3, and they are very brave to have us here tonight. So we're finding out some things and quirks. And with that, the screens have gone dark, so we'll call it a night. Thank you all. Have a good night.